Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pinstripe Prospects live stream. My name is Tommy Romanelli. I'm going to be your host for this evening, and we have a lot to talk about today. Since the last time that we've been on the stream, a lot has happened with the Yankees. They made a lot of moves. The roster has had some turnover, and we're going to break all that down today, along with some questions from everybody watching. We have a good panel tonight. First, I'm going to introduce them. So, coming up here, we have Paul Pagnato III, who is a regular on our live streams. Paul, good to see you again. How are you doing?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to the live stream. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Tons to talk about today. And a Pinstripe Prospect live stream newcomer, his very first live stream, we have Alec Arroyo. Alec, how you doing?
Doing good, Tommy. It's good to, get on here and, get started with this. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Thanks for joining us today. So we're just going to dive right in here because, like I said, there's tons to talk about. So first, I would like to talk about the Adam Ottavino signing. The Yankees were able to bolster that bullpen after acquiring Britton and getting him back. And Ottavino obviously was one of the more dominant relievers last year. He had a 2.43 ERA, 13 strikeouts per 9 innings, a whip of .99, and he even saved 6 games. The Yankees got him for 3 years, $27 million, and there was a lot of talk about whether he was going to actually sign with them after his Babe Ruth comment, which to me was kind of dumb. But I mean, to add a dominant reliever, I really don't think that that's a big deal. So I'm just going to start with you, Paul. Well, what are your thoughts on this signing?
Well, it seems like a guy that has never really had anything easy come to him. He was a 30th rounder back in 2003, and then he worked his way at Northeastern, I believe, to become a 30th overall pick in 2006 by the Cardinals. He'll be the first ever Yankee to wear 0, which is the last single-digit number available. Does he really get what being a Yankee means is a big question mark that I have. He had his Babe Ruth comments, and then he had his comments. He backtracked on the Babe Ruth comments a little bit since he made those, but he said it didn't mean that much to wear 0, etc. So only time will tell. He seems like a typical New York native guy. In his interviews, stuff like that. He's from Brooklyn. I saw him pitch last year against the Washington Nationals. He was just absolutely dominant. He had the best slider that I've ever seen, better than Andrew Miller's, and it was just.
Well, it's interesting that you say, though, that he doesn't. You don't know if he's going to understand the Yankee way. As you kind of referenced there, he is from the New York area. He grew up a Yankees fan, so you would imagine that he'd understand what it's like, or what the atmosphere of being a Yankee would be. However, I do kind of think that that's something that you don't really get unless you're actually in the pinstripes, actually playing for the team and have the fans behind you. So that being said, going into it, I think that any pitcher would have problems with that, or any player would have problems with that until they actually experience it. The Babe Ruth comments, personally, again, I don't think that there's anything huge on that, because I don't think they were meant in disrespect. And truthfully, he's probably right, just because of the way that pitchers were back then, with the way the hitters were back then. They weren't throwing hard with this crazy stuff because they were doing it over full games when Babe Ruth was playing. So it's just an entirely different game. Now Babe Ruth is obviously one of the best players, probably the best player ever to play. So it would be interesting to see them match up and see how he would do. But I think that was kind of a non-issue in my opinion. Although not, I guess, recognizing that he's lucky to be able to get that number 0. because I think that before he did that, we didn't even know if they would allow number 0 to go out. It's not often that you see that at all. So you would think that he would appreciate that, considering it's the very last one available. And he's probably going to start, because he's obviously not going to have 0 retired in Monument Park. He's older. He's only going to be here for a couple of years. But he might have started a trend now where somebody else might step in and take that number 0. So I actually do think there's a lot of meaning there, but I think that it would be something that he needs to experience firsthand to kind of understand what that's going to be like. Any thoughts you want to continue on there?
No, I think you nailed everything. It would be interesting to see him face Babe Ruth. That would be a heck of a matchup. And the way the game's trended and everything like that, I think you brought up a fair point where those really aren't that big of a deal, especially that he backtracked off of them a little bit. But it would be nice to see him appreciate ownership, allowing him to wear the number 0, and being a little bit more gracious with that. So, only time will tell whether he'll be a good Yankee. But growing up in New York City, he should know what it is, and what it means to be a Yankee.
Cool. Now I'm going to throw it to you, Alec. What are your thoughts on the signing?
To be honest with you, I'm not too stressed about any of the comments, like the Babe Ruth comments or anything like that. I think he was a part of free agency. And I think that's what you have to do, is you have to go out there, you have to make yourself be seen, so that way you can kind of drive your price up. As far as him as a pitcher, he showed last year that he has been able to adapt with the times. He actually was ranked 5th with relievers of 50 innings or more, with 112 strikeouts. His ERA plus was 193, which actually ranked 9th overall. And his K percentage was 36.3, which ranked 8th overall for relievers. He was a very effective reliever for the Rockies last year, pitching in Coors Field, which is one of the toughest places to pitch in baseball. And I think him coming over pretty much just replaces David Robertson. And even though David Robertson is a proven commodity and he has shown that he can pitch well in New York, I think that Ottavino was a very, very good signing for the Yankees, and it just boasts their super bullpen yet again this year.
Well, the one thing that really strikes me about Ottavino is that his number 1 used pitch is a slider, and it's obviously his best pitch. But to be able to dominate and keep his walks low, keep the strikeouts high, I think really speaks to the depth of that slider and just how nasty it can be. Because when you're throwing a breaking pitch more than any other type of pitch, I feel like most of the time it's going to be out in the zone. And hitters, I mean, they're all smart. They know that. So it's incredible to me to think that a pitch that he's throwing more often than not, they still can't hit it. And they're still not laying off it. So I think that the addition of him is going to be huge for the Yankees. He's going to be able to get them out of a lot of jams just because of that pitch. And Paul, like you said before, you referenced Andrew Miller. And that was my first thought, because he was the one who threw a slider as much as he did. And 90% of the time it was out of the strike zone. And people knew that, and he was still successful. So I think that is something that's really going to benefit the Yankees big time. And one thing that I wanted to bring up, because Alec, you had just mentioned this, the bullpen, again, is going to be a super bullpen. It's going to be the strength of the team this year. So my question to you guys, whoever wants to chime in here, what is this bullpen better than last year, or even the year that they had Betances and Miller? Because every year I think we get excited about what this bullpen is going to do and these big signings. So my question is there improvement here, or is it going to be a lateral move? Like, what are your thoughts on the comparison of those older bullpens compared to now?
Well, obviously, I think only time will tell, but on paper, I think it's better. You look at what the Yankees have done, and they've added strikeout relievers to make sure, to overcompensate, I think, for Miguel Andujar's defense at third. Torres hasn't had that much major league success defensively at second. Then you have a question mark at first base, and you don't know what you're going to get out of Troy Tulowitzki. So I think they really tried to get the strikeouts up in relief pitching wise, and they've done that, and they've been very, very successful at attacking that game plan and adding the Zach Brittons and the Adam Ottavinos of the world to get that to pair with the Aroldis Chapman and Dylan Betances and Chad Green. I think this really could be the best bullpen this game has ever seen. So I'll take it and raise it another level. I think it really could be, it has all the makings of a strikeout pen that they're going to produce and put up numbers that we've never seen before.
And let me add to that. As far as, this culmination of the bullpen, I think that it is a very, very good bullpen. I think that the addition of Ottavino kind of offers more potential, if that makes sense. David Robertson was, very steady. He was known as Mr. Consistent. He was Houdini. And he was one of those people that you could count on coming into the end of the game, or coming in, at any point of the game whenever you need him. If Chapman's hurt, you can count on him to, close games, whatever. But I think Ottavino offers more potential, even though he is roughly the same age as David Robertson. So to that point, I think it could be a better bullpen as long as Ottavino pitches the same way that he did last year. And that's a big if, because it was by far his best season that he's had to date.
Alec, that's a great point. I'd like to add to that and say, Ottavino has pitched in Coors Field for his home games. So approximately half of his games have been at that elevation. And he's been able to produce and put up the numbers and reinvent himself. He does provide so much more upside than David Robertson. I think David Robertson's on his decline now, to be completely honest. But it should be interesting to see how everything plays out.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
And I would say too, when you're comparing Robertson to Ottavino, Robertson, the thing about him was if he wasn't locating his fastball, he was kind of going to get hit. When he was locating it, that's when he was on. And I think that Ottavino can hide a bad day a little bit better than Robertson can. I think the pure stuff is just much better. And from that standpoint, it's going to be an upgrade. But otherwise, when they're both on, I think it's a wash. But that Britton presence, and that was something that they gained at the end of last year when they traded for him, just gave them that one more reliever in the pen, because all these years it's always been Chapman, Betances, and then Miller or Robertson. Canely was mixed in there too. So it was kind of like you had those 3 innings of shutdown ball, and then you would have like Chad Green emerged and Jonathan Holder emerged last year. So you've got those earlier innings covered now too. And, they're going to be very important pieces of the pen too. And it's funny, but in other pens, they'd be considered shutdown relievers. And, on the Yankees, they get overlooked. But I think that bringing Britton back adds that extra depth to that bullpen. And they're going to be able to cover up a lot more weak spots in the rotation, which is something that I'm still concerned about. So I think that from that standpoint, the bullpen is actually going to be a bigger strength than it has been in years past this year, because they have that more depth and more guarantee of a shutdown inning coming from more guys. So I think it's all going to be very interesting. It's going to be fun to watch, and definitely a solid move by the Yankees, and probably, in my opinion, the most solid move they made all off season. But I do want to pivot a little bit here, because that wasn't the only transaction that was made. Shortly after the Yankees signed Ottavino, they turned around and moved their focus to trading Sonny Gray, which we have been hearing about all winter long. Right after the Yankees got knocked out, Cashman was just like, yeah, we're getting rid of this guy. He's not going to be here anymore, which was very uncharacteristic. It was something that I've never seen of Cashman, and it makes me wonder, what type of personality was Sonny Gray, because they've had a lot of guys over the years that just didn't pan out, but Cashman never kind of openly admitted that, like, yeah, we don't want this guy anymore. So it makes you question, what type of guy Sonny Gray was, which kind of surprised me because he did seem to handle his struggles pretty well in front of the camera, at least last year. He obviously accepted responsibility for the fact that he was struggling. Didn't complain about going to the bullpen. Obviously wanted to be in the rotation. So I think that that was an interesting dynamic to watch. Now, the trade itself, Cashman was holding out until he found the right deal. And, we finally had the deal, which was Sonny Gray going to the Reds, along with Reaver San Martin, a left-handed pitcher in the Yankees' lower-level minors. And they acquired Shed Long from the Shed Long from the Reds in that trade, plus a draft pick that would end up being either the 36th or 37th pick in the upcoming draft for this year. And then almost immediately after they acquired Gray, they took Shed Long and turned him around to the Mariners for Josh Stowers, an outfielder, and the Mariners' second-round draft pick of 2018. And they also received, and then now they still have that 2019 draft pick coming up. So right off the bat, I'm going to ask, we'll start with you, Alec. Did the Yankees get enough for Sonny Gray?
I think that Brian Cashman did a very good job of kind of receiving some type of quality for Sonny Gray. I mean, Shed Long was the number 7 overall prospect in the Red system, which is, revered as a pretty good system overall. So I think he did a good job of highlighting Sonny Gray's road splits to kind of say that there's untapped potential there and that he just was having a tough time with handling New York City. I think the 2019 pick kind of helps as well to, rebuild the system that has kind of been a little bit more depleted over the past couple of years. And I think, making the pivot to Josh Stowers, was a good idea because he does play a premium position in center field. Even though he's not necessarily regarded as this, top prospect or anything like that. Like I said, he does play a premium position and he does have decent pop. So that is one thing that, kind of benefits from this trade. So overall, I think that they did a good job of getting some type of value for Sonny Gray.
Yeah, and I would agree that it was that he got a lot more than I expected to get out of Sonny Gray because with the overall numbers of last year and the way he struggled, it's very easy for teams to just be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not giving that for a guy who, had a balloon DRA and couldn't pitch at home. Now, you're right, his road splits were great. When you looked at it, he was solid. But I think that the thing to look at here, and when they kept talking about Shed Long, great prospect that you would see. I mean, he had his flaws, but when you consider getting him for Gray, I think you were happy about that, especially with the pick. Now, I was a little confused as to why they were going to try to go for Long, though, because if you really look at what the Yankees' issue right now with their minors is that they have a bunch of guys who are ready to come up and they don't have spots for them. So it's like, what are you going to do? He would have had to go in the 40-man, which has been in premium spots for the last 2 years for the Yankees, and they just keep trying to get value out of these guys. And a lot of these position players, let's face it, are at the higher level are not going to help the Yankees unless something happens in terms of injury. So that was just really curious to me. And then obviously they used him to turn him around for some lower level prospects. I think you could kind of see right now that the Cashman's plan is to restock those lower level minors, which is going to be a lot easier if you try to do that now, so that in a few years when they might need some guys to be ready and be at the AAA level, now they have some prospects that could really turn into something. In addition to that, Stowers is a type of hitter and player that the Yankees don't have a ton of in their minor league system. Kind of Brett Gardner-esque, where he's going to get on base, he's going to work the count, and he's going to steal a lot of bases. Speedy guy who is going to be a great defender in center field. They really don't have that, and I think that's an important dynamic to have on a roster. So it kind of had a light bulb click when you saw what Cashman was doing and turning Long around for something that actually does seem to benefit the team long term. So I think he did a really good job of being able to do that. And then they're going to have another pick, borderline first, second round. And it's going to end up really restocking those lower level minors and keeping the Yankees farm system, plentiful and, one of the best in baseball. So I'm just going to switch to Paul here. What were your thoughts on the overall trade and how do you see these prospects fitting in?
Right. Well, I'm still a firm believer in Sonny Gray. He's still 29. He signed an extension, as we haven't mentioned that yet, through 2023, which could earn him roughly about $50 million. 2019, he's going to make $7.5 million. And then his extension kicks in 2020, what was a 3-year, $30.5 million extension. And then he has a $12 million club option for 2023. I think he's going to be great in Cincinnati. I think this is a perfect fit for him. I think he's reunited with his college pitching coach. He's in a weak National League or a weaker National League division, and he's in a small market. You look at his home and away splits at Yankee Stadium. He had a 6.98 ERA with opponents hitting 318 off of him. When he was away from Yankee Stadium, he had a pretty respectable 3.17 ERA and a 2.26 batting average against. So I'm a believer in Sonny Gray, especially when he can, turn everything around and really start performing and settling in. I don't think they got enough for him, to be completely honest. Sending Reiver Sanmartin, he really had no future with the Yankees, to be completely transparent. He was acquired last year from the Texas Rangers in exchange for Ronald Herrera. He's a soft-tossing lefty. He's going to be a bullpen guy. He throws around 90 miles an hour, features a changeup and slider. But, that wasn't really a big deal. The biggest asset that we got back is that draft pick. It's valued at $10 million. And that's a lot. It's either going to be the 36th or 37th pick. Right now, MLB.com has it as the 36th pick. It just depends on whether A.J. Pollock's contract is going to be guaranteed for over $50 million or not. If it is, we'll get the 37th pick, and then Arizona will get the 36th pick, I believe. But as far as Shed Long, he's the better, more advanced prospect right now. He's a bat-first guy. He's got terrible footwork in the field, an average arm. He's an average fielder. So I really didn't see a fit there long-term. I was very happy that we flipped him to Seattle and got their second-rounder out of Louisville from the 2018 draft. He's ranked 23rd overall as a Yankee prospect right now by MLB Pipeline. You'll see our rankings soon. So those are actually going to be released tomorrow. So please look out to see where Josh Stowers is going to be ranked. But he's patient, like you said, very fast, plus defense, but his below-average arm could push him into left field. So very, very similar to Brett Gardner, as you mentioned. But overall, I think Sonny Gray was a class act, good teammate. And it was, to what you were saying about Cashman's openness about willing to deal him, I am a believer that it's more Cashman kind of really not having a big ego, but he does have more power and control now, so he can be more transparent, which is kind of refreshing because you don't see front office members do that anymore.
Yes. Well, first, thank you for the shameless plug on our top 100 prospects. That list is coming out tomorrow. So everybody be ready for that. Check it out and give us your feedback on how we did. And, if there's something that you think if a player should be lower or higher, let us know. We're always open to discussion. But to kind of piggyback off what you said, Paul, I actually think that what that was with Cashman and doing that was kind of giving this aura off to other teams that the reason why they don't want Sonny Gray is because there was some friction in the clubhouse and not because they didn't think that he was, a pitcher that can handle it, even though he had a down year. So I actually think that was a little bit of showcasing on his part just to kind of up the ante for himself and give himself some leverage. If it worked, I don't know. But hopefully the prospects will turn out. I agree the draft pick is the most valuable thing that we got back, and we'll see what happens there. I do want to change topics here a little bit. We're going to move on to another signing that the Yankees made, one that I don't know about you two, but surprised me a little bit, is when they signed DJ LeMahieu to a 2-year deal. LeMahieu is obviously been a career second baseman. He's a plus defender. He had a good offensive year last year for Colorado, but I believe it was 2016 where he really shined and had a breakout year. A little bit down on the average last year. Not a power hitter, and somebody that the Yankees apparently envision working first base and second base and third base, which was another surprise to me because it's not a guy who has done that for his career. So let's start with you, Paul. What was your reaction to DJ LeMahieu signing with the Yankees?
Overall, I was surprised. I was actually at work and I got that, and I was like speechless for the first minute and a half, thinking, where does he fit in? After reading up and doing research and familiarizing myself more with DJ, I really like it. I really think his defense. I'm a huge defensive advocate, and he just fills that void where he's going to be a super utility guy, kind of like a better Ben Zobrist type. And I'm really excited to see him play. I think he's going to see a lot more time at first base than we think. I will get to that in a little bit, but I really foresee him adding a lot of value, and I think we got a steal of a contract. If you look at what Daniel Murphy signed for, you look at what the Nationals second baseman, his name's eluding me right now, who they ended up getting. Sorry,
Daniel Murphy.
No, who they ended up signing on that one, Brian Dozier.
Oh yeah.
So they signed him for a 1-year, $9 million deal. So for what they got, I'm pretty fired up, and I think this was just one of the moves that they felt like they had to make because it was just too good of a bargain.
Well, see, and it's funny because I feel like you and I always end up having opposite reactions to everything. But when I first saw it, I was like, all right, yeah, I like this signing. And then the more I look at it, the more I actually wish that they didn't even bother with it. It makes sense to me when you look at the type of player that he is, plus defender, something that the Yankees do need. Hopefully he can carry that over. I agree he's going to see more time at first base than we are initially going to think. Similar to how Neil Walker ended up there for a lot of time last year, and who would have thought that Neil Walker would be at first base. But when you look at the type of hitter that LeMahieu is, he lets the ball travel deep into the zone before he actually hits, kind of like how Jeter used to do it. And because of that, he takes a lot of balls to the opposite field, which is something that I think with the right-handed hitters, the Yankees are always looking to acquire when they can. They just are constantly building those teams around the swing that can take the ball to right field, possibly up the power numbers, and hopefully produce that way. So he is the prototypical type of player that the Yankees would normally sign, but I just have questions of how productive he's actually going to be. He hits the ball on the ground a lot, which doesn't really bode well at Yankee Stadium, especially for an opposite field hitter. And he also, he had one great year, and the rest of them have been average. I think he hit around 275 last year, and that was in Colorado. So and when you look at the road splits, they're kind of horrible. So he wasn't great off away from Coors Field last year. So you would imagine that there's going to be some regression there. So I think that it was kind of a wasteful signing, especially a guy who, if they're going to sign somebody like that, I think he should have been able to play short. And regardless of what people say, I don't think that signing DJ LeMahieu and Short Tulowitzki is going to keep them away from Machado if his price becomes right. I think that, but we'll talk about that more later. So for me, I just think it was kind of a puzzling signing because I really don't see where he fits in. And to be honest with you, I kind of envision him ending up with kind of like a bench role that's not going to play as much as maybe Neil Walker did, barring injury. So, Alec, what are your thoughts on the signing?
To be honest with you, I was very similar to how Paul felt, where I was just shocked. I was kind of confused at first when they came out with the signing. 2 years, $24 million. It doesn't really, bog the Yankees down too much. But at the same time, it was one of those signings that just didn't necessarily make sense to me. For what everything points to, it points to LeMahieu playing in that utility role of first base, second base, possibly playing a little bit of third, and using his glove and kind of going around the infield. But for me, I felt as though if they were going to do that, they should have went for someone that was a little bit more cost effective. Last year, they went with Neil Walker, 1 year, $4 million. And, being a switch hitting bat, he fit pretty nicely into the lineup, even though he had a rough season for the most part. And I feel as though the Yankees kind of went a odd route with their utility signing. It just kind of threw me off a little bit. As far as his home road splits, there was a good article on Fangraphs. I don't remember who wrote it, but they were talking about how a lot of players who leave Coors Field and then go to different ballparks, they actually see a little bit of a regression to the mean and kind of meeting in the middle as far as their home road splits. They don't necessarily tell the whole tale. But I do think that he is a better hitter than his home road splits show. But I am still kind of a little perplexed by the signing overall.
Yeah, and I think that the salary is what really turned me off on the deal, because he did get a good chunk of money. And if you're going to spend that type of money and you want a utility player, why not go sign Marwin Gonzalez? He's obviously done it before, and he's a productive player, potentially more productive than he's going to be. So I personally think that for that contract, they could have gotten Marwin and would have been a much better fit. Or, as you said, re-sign Walker.
And to add to that, it's also something that LeMahieu hasn't done much in his career. So he's been primarily the second baseman over in Coors. He played a little bit of third base and a little bit of first base, but for the most part, he has mainly played second throughout his career. So now we're bringing him into a new environment and asking him to learn and play two different positions that he hasn't been too familiar with overall. So it's a lot of question marks, and I think it adds a lot of questions, because now if we want to do something like work LeMahieu into the lineup and put him at second base, then you're shifting Gleyber Torres over to shortstop and having the left side of the infield being Gleyber Torres and Miguel Andujar, both of those second-year players that had a lot of defensive miscues last season.
Yeah, and you're also taking away a player who is a plus defender at second base and making him play other positions. So that's just, I mean, it kind of tells me, though, that the way that they're going to plan to use him, like, I don't think they have as much faith into Tulowitzki playing a ton of shortstop like they're kind of alluding to right now. I think that they're probably envisioning Gleyber playing a lot of short, which is he's above average shortstop defensively, and probably putting the LeMahieu at second a lot too. So I kind of see that happening a decent amount, pending Bird and Voit being, average. So, Paul, anything else to add on this subject?
No.
All right. Well, we're going to move on a little bit here. One thing that we wanted to do with the season approaching, and, there's a lot of different names that, honestly, I think it's the first time in a while that we're going to be going into spring training and not really know who's going to be playing where. So, and, which positions are, who's even going to be starting. So we all put together our own version of what we think the opening day Yankees lineup is going to look like. So I thought we'd talk about that a little bit. Paul, I want to start with you on this one. So we're going to look here, and why don't you break down your lineup for us?
Absolutely. So I had Brett Gardner leading off, playing left. I think he's just kind of a table setter. That's what he's been his entire career. And on top of that, he sees a lot of pitches. I think it's just beneficial and it works the best to have him lead off versus bat ninth. Batting second, I have Judge in right field. I mean, this one, nowadays you have your best hitter hitting second, and there's nothing more to it than that. Then you have Miguel Andujar playing third base, batting third. Think I put him here above Sanchez because he makes more contact, and same with Hicks too. I think he really is a valuable cog in this lineup. And then you have Stanton hitting fourth. Nothing more than your prototypical power hitter hitting fourth as a DH. And then I put Sanchez, Hicks, too low. I put Sanchez above Hicks just because I think what he's capable of is better than what Hicks is capable of. Hicks still doesn't hit for a very high average. He does hit for a lot of power. Sanchez, I think, is going to hit for power and average this year and moving forward. I just think he really struggled, consistently last year. But we got a taste of what Sanchez can really do in the postseason. He performed pretty well behind the plate. And it's just bringing that energy and that focus every single day is what really is going to make him another all-star again. And then I have Torres 8 playing second, and then DJ LeMahieu batting ninth playing first. I think having that pressure off of Glaber batting eighth, I think that's just a really good fit there. And then batting ninth, having LeMahieu, like you said, ground ball guy. Maybe you could do some hit and runs with Gardner, being up next. You have Glaber in front of him, Tulo in front of him. So you could really just kind of, have quicker guys in front of DJ. So that's kind of, my thought process behind there. I think DJ's too good of a player to have on the bench. I think Luke Voit is a flash in the pan, and I don't think Greg Bird is going to have any value to us anymore. I see him in AAA.
Cool. Well, thank you for that breakdown. And I do want to point out here for everybody looking at our screen and our lineups, we all went in a completely different direction. Mine's probably the most out of left field. But it's good because it kind of gives that fresh perspective there. And one point I do want to touch on your lineup. Aaron Hicks in that sixth spot, I think, is the best spot for him. I just think that the type of hitter he is like just what exactly you would want out of that spot, and he could be extremely productive from there. So I do like your Hicks in the sixth spot.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So we're going to move over to Alec here. Do you want to break down your lineup for us?
Yeah, sure. So obviously this isn't what I think is the most ideal lineup personally, but I think that this is probably one of the routes that, Aaron Boone and company kind of go with. I have Brett Gardner leading off because for the most part, Gardner was hitting either first or ninth in the lineup. So last season. So I think it kind of fits well to kind of slot him up there, batting leadoff. And then obviously Aaron Judge, when he was in the lineup last year, he was batting second. He was clearly the best hitter that we had on the team. So, slotting him into the 2-hole is a no-brainer for me. Putting Aaron Hicks in the 3-hole, I think is something that Aaron Boone kind of showed last year that he wanted to do. He showed that he really liked Aaron Hicks as a player, moving him all throughout the lineup and kind of using him as like this Swiss Army knife within the Yankees lineup. I have Giancarlo hitting fourth, just because I think, splitting up Judge and Stanton is probably the best thing to do. And then, sticking Hicks in between the two kind of fits really nicely. I still have Gary Sanchez hitting fifth, just because, potentially Gary can be one of the best hitters in this lineup. And I do think last year he did have that injury, and I think he's going to bounce back and have a pretty solid season. I have Andujar hitting sixth. just because of his contact numbers. He puts the bat to ball. He goes to all fields. I think he's perfect to kind of fit in there, and clean up any hitter or any runners that are on base within the first 5 hitters. And then I have Gleyber Torres hitting 7th. I kind of considered putting him in the 9 hole, just similar to what Boone had last year, just because it seemed that Boone really liked the idea of having a second leadoff hitter hitting 9th. But I just personally, I couldn't put myself I couldn't put Gleyber hitting 9th just because I feel like his bat is too good to kind of hit lower in the lineup. I had Luke Voit hitting 8th, not because necessarily I think that he's going to be the starting first baseman, but just because all reports kind of show that as of right now, Voit is going to play first base. Brian Cashman said at the end of the season that Voit has a leg up going into spring training. So I think as of right now, Voit has the job, but I personally think that they want Greg Bird to be the first baseman. They've kind of, showed everything that way. And then 9th, I have Tulo hitting and playing shortstop. I am not the biggest Tulowitzki fan necessarily, but I think that, going off of what Cashman said, he was saying that Tulo is going to be the shortstop, going into the season. So I think, you kind of just throw him in there hitting 9th, and then you obviously have LeMahieu coming off of the bench. So,
yeah, I mean, a very interesting lineup. I think you're right in terms of where a lot of these guys and the Yankees' tendencies are to put them in the lineup. My question for you, out of the guys that you did put in that lineup, do you see Tulowitzki as possibly the weakest hitter in the lineup?
I think all things considered, he did not play all of 2018. And 2017, he only played, I believe, 44 games overall. So I think it's unrealistic to expect him to come in his age 34 season, taking off almost a year and a half and being able to be the same hitter that he was a few years ago. So I think that any production that we can get from him would be a plus, but I think mainly he's there because of his defensive skills at shortstop.
Yeah, very, very true. I do think that, his age plus injury history plus time off is going to make him, at the very least, start off slow. So I think that was a solid point there. Now I'll break down my lineup. Clearly very different from both of yours. I had a little fun with it. Obviously, I'm like Alec. This isn't exactly what I think is probably going to be the ideal lineup, nor do I think that it's extremely likely to happen. But this is kind of how I see things shaking out over spring training. So first I have Aaron Hicks, obviously leading off here. And the reason why I did that is just because of the end of the year and the tendencies that the Yankees had. I think that they like Hicks in that leadoff spot because he provides power and he works the count. He's a switch hitter, so he can see the ball from both sides and kind of get that tough at bat right out of the gate. And he was there a lot at the end of last year, and I kind of see that sticking. Brett Gardner, as you can see, I don't even have in my lineup just because I think that he's going to be the fourth outfielder this year. I don't think he's going to play a ton unless he has to. I think that they're going to try to limit his at-bats and hopefully he'll be productive, but I think he's mostly on the team to be a leader and kind of help these young guys develop. So I really don't see him being a regular anymore. So I like Hicks in that leadoff spot, but like I said before, I think that if you had the ideal lineup, he'd probably be 6. Judge, one of the spots we were all in agreement with, he hasn't moved from that spot in 2 years. Best hitter on the team, and that's the trend in baseball right now, so I think he's got that spot cemented. My 3 hitter, I do have Gary Sanchez. I know he had a down year, but I know that he knows he's got something to prove this year. He was a breakout star. There was a lot of stories around him in terms of, his defensive capabilities. And last year, everybody was questioning his work ethic and, is he going to hustle every play? And I think that, honestly, when it all bears down to it, that's not Sanchez. I think that, he knows he's got a lot to prove and he's going to have a big year this year because his potential is to be the best hitter in this lineup. I really do believe that. So I think that he's going to come out of the gate firing and doing well, and I think they're going to have him there to try to protect Judge and set up Stanton. Stanton, though, is my 4-hitter at the DH spot, which is another one we were all in agreement with. And I just think that that's where he belongs. He's obviously got elite power. And, I think he put up a pretty good year for being traded and, having his first taste of pinstripes. And I think that he's just going to build off that and get better. Hopefully he cuts down on those strikeouts and swings at better pitches and has better timing this year. If he does that, he's going to put up huge numbers, and I think the 4 spot is where he belongs. I do have Andujar batting 5th. He was probably one of the better players on the team last year. He was solid all around, and I think that he's earned that spot in the 5-hole, and he's going to provide some good protection there. That being said, I do expect some regression from Andujar. I think that there's a lot of tape on him now. I think you started to see that at the end of the year in the playoffs where they were exploiting some holes from him, and he struggled. And I think that we're about to see what type of player he actually is. Is he going to be able to adjust, or is he going to, kind of fall off a little bit? I don't think he's going to have a terrible year. I just think there's going to be some regression. I think his average will be a little bit lower. Power I expect to be around the same, but maybe the extra base hits down a little bit this year. So I think that's something to watch with him this year. Tulowitzki, I also don't have a ton of faith with him, but I do have him hitting in the 6-hole because I think what the Yankees are expecting out of him is to hit for a very low average, play decent defense. I think he'll be kind of like a halftime player, but maybe a little bit more than half. But I think that what they're really looking for him is to have power numbers, which is why I think he's going to fit into the 6-hole if that comes to fruition. If he's hitting for power and these guys are on base, then the Yankees are going to look to him to just try to clean up some of those RBIs and kind of capitalize when they can. However, I don't expect him to be a huge part of this offense all year round. Now, while I say that Andujar is going to regress a little bit, I actually expect the opposite from Gleyber Torres, who I have hitting 7th. Gleyber is probably one of the smartest hitters I've ever seen and that I've been around. He knows how to adjust to hitters. To pitchers. He's already proven that. And I think that he's going to continue to get better and better this year. And honestly, his talent levels, as we've been talking about for years, is off the chart. So I see him sliding into that 7-hole to begin, but I actually wouldn't be surprised to see him move up higher in the lineup as the year goes on. But coming out of the gate, I think the 7th spot is where he belongs. Now, we all had different first basemen, and I kind of went with Greg Bird on this one, mainly from just history. Greg Bird typically comes out and fires on all cylinders in spring training and just ends up having these huge spring trainings that earns him the job. I do agree that Voit has the leg up here, and he is going to, rightly so, get the first crack at first base. But I agree with Paul that he's going to be a flash in the pan, and he's not really anything that they can count on for another full year. So I think that Bird is going to come out hot, and whether he continues it into the year or stays healthy, who knows? But I think that he's going to earn himself the spot in spring training because that's just what he does. Now, batting 9th, definitely, literally out of left field, is Clint Frazier, and I have him there because I think that he's ready to be an everyday productive big player for the Yankees. I think that he's got the talent to be there for the long term, and also I think he's a 5-tool potential player. I think that Clint is the type of player and person who is really angry about how last year went. He knows that he's got all of these comments coming at him with, he can't stay healthy. And obviously he went through some traumatic stuff with his concussions last year. And, he's all over Twitter telling everybody, I'm ready to prove myself. When he got his shot last year, he produced. And when he is healthy, I think that's exactly what he's going to do. His swing looked phenomenal last year when I saw him here in Scranton. It looked great up at the major league level. He's staying on that back foot more instead of lifting it up, kind of Bryce Harper-esque. And I think that if he could stay healthy, that's our left fielder all year. I think, it's obviously a big if. He's got to earn it. But I think that that's going to be the player to watch for me this year. And I think everybody knows that I'm a big fan of his from watching him here in Scranton and watching him develop. And, he's a hard worker. The bat speed's there, and the defense is key for him in left field. So I really do see him winning a spot, at least on the team, coming out of spring training. So anything else to add, guys?
Yeah, I've got one thing. Tommy, to your point, I think personally, I would like to see Clint Frazier out there in left field on opening day because honestly, he's one of my more favorite players in baseball. I love the fire, the intensity. And also, as far as Gleyber Torres goes, I think that potentially he's someone that we could see leading off at some point this season. I think that he has that type of ability. And so personally, I would ideally like to see him in that leadoff spot, but I think that's something that'll come eventually, like later on throughout the season.
And I think that's a phenomenal point. I mean, we talked about how we didn't think that these lineups we put together were ideal, just what we thought would happen. And I think Hicks in that 6th spot works well, and I think that Gleyber in the leadoff spot would be very, very good. Anything else for you to add, Paul?
No, all good.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the differences in our lineup kind of shows how there really isn't a right answer here yet. And I think this is the first year that you really don't know where it's going to go. And there's so many options now, and my question actually, looking at those lineups, regardless of how it shakes out and just the available players, is this lineup actually as good as it's been last year and the year before? What about you, Paul?
I think it just all comes down to health.
Assuming health.
Assuming health, the talent level is there at each and every position. You look at everybody from Brett Gardner, from his talent level and what he can do offensively and defensively, to Troy Tulowitzki and what he can do if healthy. I think unquestionably the talent is there. It's just health.
I agree with that. I think as long as I personally think Brett Gardner should be a 4th outfielder type, and I think that's what the Yankees envision. And I think if Clint Frazier gets to actually play and gets consistent at bats at the major league level, I think that bringing him into the lineup can actually help a lot for the Yankees with this upcoming season.
Well, when I look at that lineup and the available options, I honestly think that they took a big hit in the lineup this year. Because, I mean, I really don't see Tulowitzki being too productive. Like I said, I expect some regression from Andujar. I think they're going to miss a lot of what Didi provided to that lineup last year. And I really don't see LeMahieu being all that great. So, and of course, there's a big hole at first base. Nobody knows what's happening. Assuming health, I don't know. I don't see it being as productive as it was last year. So I think that for as much as they keep saying they don't need Machado and he's a luxury, and no, I actually do think that they need him. I really do. It's just I look at that lineup and I could actually see them struggling this year at the plate. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. And another thing to look at too. Not one of us even mentioned Jacoby Ellsbury, who, yes, is still on this team. Assuming health for him, believe it or not, I actually think he's got a leg up on Brett Gardner this year. I think that if he's healthy, he'd probably get more playing time in left field than Gardner will. Just because I think that his talent level is probably a little bit above Gardner's at this point. But to be honest with you, both of them, are big question marks. Yeah. But, I mean, thanks for putting together those lineup, guys. Those were awesome. And I'm sure that there's a lot of opinions out there of how that's going to shake out. So it'll be interesting to see how it actually ends up working out come the end of spring training. But we will move on to the topic of the offseason, something that nobody will shut up about. And I think everybody wants to stop talking about. But here we are. We're going to talk about it. And that is Bryce Harper and Manny Machado. How has your opinion shifted to this point of the offseason? I know that we all kind of expected the Yankees to get Machado. They signed LeMahieu. Now they're saying they're out. I don't believe that. There's apparently mystery teams. The Padres are looking out at it. The White Sox are apparently given an offer that is not great. And these guys are getting stingy. They haven't signed. They haven't, liked anything that's come their way. So what's your thoughts, Alec?
I think that it's kind of ridiculous that there's not all 30 teams in the MLB in on both Machado and Harper, because I think they're incredible baseball players, and I think that, you know, they would be a fit for all 30 teams in baseball. I think that Manny Machado, I agree with you. I think that he definitely helps this lineup, and I don't care about the lefty-righty split. I think Manny Machado, he has showed that he can hit both lefties and righties with, you know, no issues whatsoever. And I don't think that, like you said, LeMahieu and Tulowitzki, you know, prevent the Yankees from trying to sign a superstar level baseball player. I would love to see him in pinstripes. I would love to see Bryce Harper in pinstripes, but I don't necessarily think that they're in on Harper. Just because if you think about it, the Yankees have Giancarlo Stanton for the next 10 seasons. They have Aaron Judge playing right field, who they ideally want to keep in pinstripes for his career. And then if they were to go after someone like Bryce Harper, that would just lock up the whole outfield for the next 10 seasons overall. So it just doesn't make sense to go after someone like Bryce Harper. I think Manny Machado fits really well. I think if they were to do that, then there would need to be some type of pivot, whether that's with Miguel Andujar or whatever. But I think that Manny Machado does make this lineup better, and I think that he would be a good person to put into pinstripes.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I think Manny is a logical fit. I think by him playing in the American League East, proving that he can do it in that division, that's huge. I like his defense a lot better as a third baseman than a shortstop. I think he's just a tick behind Arenado, and some other guys. So I'd say he's a top, 4-5 defender as a third baseman, which the Yankees definitely need defense right now. And as far as Bryce goes, I mean, I think the Yankees need a left-handed power bat 100% to balance this lineup out. I think that guy is maybe Justin Bour, or could have been Justin Bour or something like that, on the first base side, to be completely honest. But, obviously the Yankees didn't go that way. Bour got picked up by, I believe, the Angels, and the rest is history. But I don't see a logical fit for Bryce. Like you said, it would clog up the outfield for the next decade. That's kind of fun as a fan, to know that you're going to have, these guys for a long time. And it would be, if not the best outfield in baseball, one of the best. I mean, you're talking, 3 Hall of Fame caliber players in Judge, Stanton, and Harper. But overall, I think Manny Machado is a logical fit. I believe that, at the end of the day, he wants to be in New York. He's always hit well at Yankee Stadium. The biggest question, I think, is his character. And if he gets that big contract, say, okay, I'm guaranteed to have $300 million now, I can take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit. That, I think, is the number one factor on why he hasn't been offered that $300 million deal to our knowledge yet.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with both of you on that. I like I said, I think that the lineup is pretty weak at this point, and I think that they need another bat to make up for Didi. If they had Didi, I think that changes things a little bit, but I just don't see as much production as last year. So I think that having Machado in that lineup, not so much Harper, would really take them to the next level and help them compete, because I really don't think that this team is any better than Houston or Boston. But I mean, I think we've kind of exhausted everything that we could possibly talk about with these two guys. Hopefully they sign soon so that we can just start looking forward to pitchers and catchers reporting in a couple weeks.
Get it over with.
Yeah, seriously. It's drawing on, and it's not good for the game, in my opinion. But I do want to shift a little bit here. We're going to start to wrap this up. But as Paul had mentioned earlier, tomorrow we released our Yankees top 100 prospect list. So definitely want to check that out. I know that, as a reward for everybody sticking around with us for this last hour, we're going to give you a little bit of a preview here. We're going to do 91 to 100 and just give you quick snippets of each player. So I'm just going to do this one by one, guys. So if you want to kind of look at that, I'll start with number 91 here, which is Hobie Harris, a right-handed pitcher in the Yankees' lower minor leagues. He has a career minor league ERA of upper minor leagues. Career minor league ERA of 2.84. And the thing that really sticks out to me about him is he's got almost a 3-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio for his career. He's got 204 strikeouts and only 72 walks. So Hobie is definitely somebody that we're going to look at. And then number 92 on the list is Sean Semple. And Paul, could you take Sean?
Sure. He's a right-handed pitcher. Played primarily with Staten Island Yankees this year. I like him. I think he's just got to command the ball a little bit better and develop his off-speed stuff, and he'll climb up the organization ranks.
Good, thank you. And then next, Alec, if you can talk about number 93 on our list, who is Caleb Ort, a right-handed pitcher.
Yeah, so Caleb Ort, he has a mid-90s fastball that, can reach up to around 97 on certain occasions. He shows a lot of aggressiveness on the mound, which I personally love. He is an older prospect, being in his age 26 season. Last year he pitched for Tampa, the Tarpons. So he's one of those people to look out for who will hopefully make a couple moves within the next year.
Great. Number 94 on the list is Johnny Brito, a right-handed pitcher. The thing to watch for him is he pitches from a 3/4 arm angle. So there's a different look coming at him from the hitters, which could end up helping him be a little bit more productive. And his stuff isn't really plus at this point, but he does work with 3 pitches, that being a fastball, a changeup, and a curveball. Moving on to number 95 on the list, right-handed pitcher Brian Keller. Paul, could you take that?
Sure, Brian. He's one of the more interesting one of the more interesting right-handed pitchers in a huge strength area of this farm system and I think this is why he's ranked in the 90s. You put him in a different farm system and he'll be there probably in the top 50 prospects. I think it just says, it talks to the depth of the Yankees organization and what they have in right-handed pitching. I see, him as more of like an organizational arm, to be completely honest, but, I think, he's just kind of lost in translation of all those right-handed arms that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So then, Alec, if you would do number 96 on our list, Gio Orozco.
Yeah, so Gio Orozco, he was acquired in the Ben Gamel trade back in 2016. He has a potentially like a 95-mile-an-hour fastball along with a curveball and a changeup. He had an effective 2017, posting a 3.5 ERA over 24 starts. The only thing he needs to work on is his control.
All right, thank you. Number 97 on our list is Daniel Ramos, another right-handed pitcher. Clearly a theme here with our bottom 10 here. He missed a lot of time with injuries last year and really over his career, which has really derailed him. But he does have a mid-90s fastball. But the thing with him is he's got an excellent curveball. He has above-average spin rate there. And he also has a changeup that he uses, but that only rates out as average. So if he can get the injury history taken care of and kind of build up some durability, I think that he actually could end up being a productive minor leaguer for the Yankees with that curveball. But moving on to number 98 on our list, outfielder Tyler Hill. Paul, if you could take that one.
So I'm actually not too familiar with Hill, seeing as he just came into the organization from the Boston Red Sox, I believe. Right now, he's currently in AAA. So he'll be an outfielder for Scranton Wilkes-Barre. He's 22 years old and from Wilmington, Delaware, 19th round pick back in 2014 from the Red Sox. Looks like he's had a pretty decent 2017 in full season A, playing for Greenville in the South Atlantic League, where he slashed 272, 342, and 390. And as he moved up to advanced A, his numbers kind of tailed off a little bit. So I would expect him to play with the Tampa Tarpons beginning this year.
Great. And moving on to number 99 on the list, we have Ryan McBroom, first baseman. Alex, if you could take that.
Yeah, so Ryan McBroom, he obviously plays first base and a little bit of outfield, not as much. He profiles as a first baseman. He has above average bat speed and average pop. He's a larger build, so he actually has below average footwork. So he's probably going to play, first base, like I said.
Awesome. And finally, number 100 on our list, we have right-handed pitcher Jansen Junk. I will put my name on the line here and say that this guy's going to make it to the majors simply because he's got a big league name. Cool. Throwing that junk ball. Absolutely. But for Junk, he does have a career minor league ERA of 3.39. He did start 15 games last year in the organization. And some stats to highlight: in 88.3 innings pitched last year, he did strike out 81. So he could be a pitcher on the rise here. And he certainly rounds out our top 100 prospect list this year, which that was just a little taste for everybody. We like I said, we do have that entire list releasing tomorrow. So go ahead, go to the site, check it out. Check out our Facebook page or our Twitter page. The links will be posted on there. So 6 a.m. sharp when you're drinking your morning coffee, go over and check out our list. And like I said, we appreciate any feedback you give us. So feel free to debate it out with us. But I just want to thank everybody for tuning into our live stream here. So look out for the prospect list. And then the other thing I do want to highlight is that we will have a team going down to minor league spring training this year. We will be, I know Paul will be there. I will be there, and our executive producer and everybody the guy that makes all of this happen for us, Robert Pibsner, will be down there as well. And we're hoping to have a few more. So we will be providing coverage from the minor league spring training this year. Definitely look at that, come March. But I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today again. I want to thank Paul and Alec for joining us today, and of course Rob just for doing what he does with these sweet graphics we've got going on here. But thanks again for watching. We will have more of these, and of course we'll have our regular podcast coming. Feel free to give us good ratings in the podcast stores with the Apple Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, take a look for all of us during the year. We're going to start doing the regular podcast again, starting the year. So from Paul Pagnato and Alex Arroyo, my name is Tommy Romanelli, and like a third strike, we're out.